All right, are we ready to get started? Yes? Okay. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to City with Dwelling's third installment of Roots and Responses Community Forum. This forum is designed to take a deeper dive into the causes impacting the crisis of homelessness in our community. Our goal is to bring together the folks from the front lines of this work, leaders and innovative voices from our community, and you to examine particular areas' impact and have dialogue about the creative ways that change can happen in these areas. This evening, we will be discussing how mental health challenges impact individuals experiencing homelessness. We have a great lineup of speakers with us tonight, including from City with Dwellings, Daymark Recovery Services, and the Mobile Integrative Health. So I hope that you learn something and take something away from this program tonight, and that you enjoy it. And with that, I will turn the program over to Lee Thornberry, who is the Director of Diversion and Outreach at City with Dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are so proud at CWD to City with Dwellings to collaborate with this group of panelists because we interact with these folks that you see on the screen almost every day. And this is a unique group of people, I think, because no matter how formal their title may be, you're going to hear boots on the ground experiences tonight, and you're going to also experience their huge hearts. Together with this group, CWD, we're honored to celebrate successes together, and we also grieve together about losses in our community. This group represents 4 different resources in Forsyth County. Winston-Salem Police Department may be able to join us. They've had an emergency, so if they pop on, we will definitely welcome them. But these folks are not merely employed by their agencies. We view them as having a vocation and not just an occupation. So we're all in for a real treat. We're going to learn something, and this is a fun group. A group full of joy in a very, very difficult line of work. So if you have questions, everybody, along the way, just add them to the chat box. So we have 2 people monitoring that chat box, and I'll be watching as well, and we'll make sure that either gets to the appropriate panelist or we'll open that up to the whole group. So let's just jump right in. I'm just gonna pick you all off one at a time. How's that? All the panelists have been asked to describe how their agencies and their specific position within the community intersects with our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness, and specifically those who also experience mental health challenges. So I am going to start with Courtney. So Courtney Sapp is the mobile engagement team leader for Daymark Recovery Services, Cardinal and the Triad. And I believe it's not just Forsyth County. I believe your group covers 6 counties. And there are just a very pequeño amount, a very small amount of them. So Courtney, how does your agency at Daymark Recovery Services and your particular position within the community intersect with our neighbors, especially those who are experiencing homelessness and mental health?
Yeah, I'm Courtney Sapp. As she said, I'm Daymark Recovery's mobile engagement team lead. So I oversee the team that responds to mobile engagement. Most of you would probably know it as mobile crisis. So my team covers 9 different counties, going all the way down from Union, Stanley County, through Cabarrus, Rowan, Davidson, Davie, and then Forsyth, of course, and then Rockingham and Stokes. So they kind of cover all those. We do our best to respond as quickly as we can and get to know all the resources. We work with MIH quite a bit in Forsyth County, and just everyone at City with Dwellings also. But yes, so that's that. We also have other teams. So we're tied with Daymark. So mobile crisis is kind of tied through one company in each county. And so we're tied through Daymark. That is who we are, but we will refer to anyone and everyone. What happens for us, like she mentioned, what she asked us to bring up, how we intersect is we come across a lot of homeless population. And one of the challenges we find with mental health is finding support, using groups like City with Dwellings and others but finding those supports, helping to access resources, and also wanting those resources, making sure they want access to those resources, working with those other resources that we find. Like I mentioned with MIH, we all the time are contacting them for help too, finding other places to go. And if we need to do an involuntary commitment, if that's most appropriate, but trying to find the least restrictive way to help someone and find them supports. It's not all mental health, as we know, mental health gets tied with substance use. So if it's helping to find that detox, if it's helping to find somewhere that they can stabilize, and meeting them where they're at. I go on calls also, like she said, boots on the ground. I do the calls also. I respond out at any hour. But we also go and utilize our behavioral health urgent care over at Daymark, and helping clients to find the resources through there if they need stabilization for a period of time. Because again, trying to stick to what's least restrictive, but also working with other agencies like City with Dwellings, we were just talking to Lee about a second ago, finding if there are windows of time we can help. We're finding resources to help with those mental health concerns. And so we try and connect whatever we can, and find exceptions to the rules when we can, because sometimes you can find exceptions to get you through and get appointments and find supports.
This is a really creative group. And even though this group is funded in all different kinds of ways, and with funding comes particular things you can and you can't do, this is a really creative group, not rule breakers or rule benders, but thinking out of side of the box people within the parameters of their vocation. So that's particularly exciting to us at City with Dwellings, because we can think creatively and don't have to be worried about saying, well, we just can't do it that way. So we love that about Daymark. So next, I'm going to call on Laura Smith. She works with the Mobile Integrated Health team, and she will answer my phone. I pocket dialed her twice today, and but she will answer my phone whenever I call, and is very involved one-on-one like the rest of these panelists. So same question, Laura. How do you use your agency, MIH, which we affectionately call you all MIH? How does your agency and your position specifically within the community intersect with our neighbors experiencing homelessness and mental health challenges?
Okay, so we work for 911, the ambulance service. And so we intersect with everybody throughout all segments of society. We don't discriminate against the sections of town we go to, or whoever the client may be. We offer our services to whoever wants them. We serve everybody in the county that calls and asks for assistance. How do we intersect with them? We go on an as needed basis. They can call us by accessing 911. We are the people who triage emotional emergencies and behavioral emergencies for the county. We are the ones that do the medical clearance. So we evaluate somebody to see if they have a medical need, which is going to preclude them from going to a behavioral health provider, necessitating them to go to the emergency room, or we send them directly to the behavioral health provider if they don't have a underlying medical condition that would preclude them from seeking services. Let's say at the urgent care or with mobile crisis, we kind of screen for that, and we try to refer them to the appropriate resource. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a medical resource. It doesn't have to be a behavioral resource. Today we don't, Lee did need to talk to me, even though she called me a couple of times unnecessarily. She ended up needing to talk to me, and we were able to route that through a completely different channel than we had ever used before. We used a creative solution and it worked. So that's one thing that paramedics are really, really good at, is evaluating a situation and just seeing if we can make something work. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work and it breaks, then we send it back to be fixed. So we intersected with groups looking for other kinds of resources. We recently referred a group to go through some help with disability process. So we have kind of a handle on all the different resources that are available. We've taken, everybody had like a handout packet of these are available resources, whether it be food banks or clothing resources or whatever it may be. We gathered these all up when we started way back in 2016. And we compiled them all into one working document so that we have an ongoing list of these things and we can look at it, whether we're mobile out in the field or whether we're in our office. We can look at that and we can find a resource for whatever need somebody might have, no matter which of the 8 realms of wellness it happens to be in. So we try to be versatile. We try to be the fix-it people, because if you call 911, you're going to get one of 3 entities. You're going to get an ambulance, you're going to get a police officer, or you're going to get a fire truck. And when it doesn't meet the definition of what those agencies typically do, historically, the ambulance service gets there and you're sick, you hurt, you want to go to the hospital. That's what they're there for. We come along and say, these 3 agencies obviously don't have anything to offer you. And you called 911 because you're at the end of your rope and the end of your resources. So how can we address your need, whatever it may be, and point you in the right direction to the people that will help you? And then we also advocate. We don't just point somebody in a direction and then stop. If they need somebody to walk alongside them, to coin a phrase, to handhold or to advocate or to knock on a door or possibly kick it, we will do that. So we're not the people who look for a reason to opt out of helping people.
Yes, definitely another think outside of the box agency, big heart, always thinking. Their minds are just rolling all the time when presented with something. And so we're just so grateful to have you all in our community. So next on our list, next to pick off here is Mark Dockery. And Mark Dockery is part of our City with Dwellings family, and he works directly with our street population. So he has direct outreach engagement. So he's not an office fella. We see him breeze through. We know where he is most of the time. And but he is out in the field. So he is under the bridges, he's in the woods, over to grandma's house he goes, and he does. So Mark, take it away and answer that same question.
Right. Sometimes I'm not sure where I'm at.
Yeah.
No, there's actually 2 parts of my position, which is transportation and the outreach. And I'll touch a bit on the transportation as far as intersecting with people with mental health. And that is one of the things I strive to do is when I'm transporting somebody is that vehicle is a safe space and that person can show up however they are. So if they're screaming at somebody that I can't see, they're allowed to do that. Then that actually does help me as well to support them and to get into whatever agency they need to get to, whatever their needs are. I can help meet that or have somebody to meet them with those needs. So that vehicle becomes a safe space. People show up however they are. They can cry, they can scream, they can laugh. We can sing. I've had several people singing songs. One of these days I'm gonna get a recording of us singing some great country songs. But that just becomes a big safe space, and it creates a trust and a bond with the community. On the outreach part, totally different, because I am, like Lee said, I am out in the field. I am walking the tracks, walking the woods. I was out today. I got spider webs in my hair right now. So that is a slightly different one because I don't know what I'm walking into sometimes. And there are people who are in these tent cities who have a mental illness. And I'm having to judge the situation when I walk up. A few days ago, I walked up on somebody and he's standing there with a machete. So there's those types of things. Now, he's not a danger. However, he's just saying, don't come around. And then there's times when I walk up to somebody and they're just as friendly as they can be and very welcoming. And most of them are like that, very welcoming. The way I intersect with them, though, is I first of all, come in, hey, it's Mark, City with Dwellings with Outreach, announce myself before I even get to the tent cities, and then just slowly engage with them unless I actually know the person that's there. If I know the person is there, I can usually walk right in and talk to them. It's not a problem. Yeah, and then just assess where they're at on the field and whatever their needs are, what's going on with them, and if they need to come back in to see someone, or just really check on their well-being is what I'm doing out there.
Yeah, definitely, Mark. I don't think you ever have 2 days, pretty much like everybody else on this call, that are ever the same.
Yep.
And we try not to use and abuse him, but we, Mark, I probably have more calls to you in a day. Can you do this? Are you here? Are you there? Have you seen this person? Than just about anybody else. So I would encourage people to ask questions in the chat box. We'll open it up to individual or to the full panel. I think the MIH question was answered. So Laura is with MIH Mobile Integrated Health. So I failed to say that earlier. So we just call them MIH. And actually, when you call 911, sometimes if you say Mobile Integrated Health, they don't know who you're talking about. But if you say MIH, they do know exactly who you're talking about. So that's a well-known. Oh, yes. Are you having technical, or are you?
No, the easier thing to say is community paramedic.
Community paramedic. That's good. See, I've learned something right now. If I have someone here in our parking lot that we need you and your uniqueness, we will say community. What'd you just say? Community
Paramedic.
Community paramedics. Done.
MIH sounds better over the radio because it makes us sound like British spies.
Yeah. I like it. So keep sending your questions in, but I've got a few for outreach and diversion is my job. And so I have a few questions to ask. So how do you all feel about the daily challenges you face? Do any of you feel like your hands are tied for one reason or another? I have mentioned that you're a very think outside of the box, but are there some challenges that you're facing interacting with our homeless population that experiences mental health care challenges as well?
I think that we're addressing some of the challenges that we've had, taking them on as clients, in the fact that they're working with different entities and different outreach groups.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've reached out to the people that we know that they're working with, or if they mention a name, we try to identify who that is and where they work, and make sure that that person is aware that they've reached out to us. And so we communicate across agencies with, we might be helping them, referring them to help to a SOAR caseworker to help with disability paperwork, or we might be getting them appointments with a primary care physician, but to let the other agencies that are trying to work with them sort of know what we're doing and communicate back and forth about what they need, what needs are being addressed, what needs aren't being addressed, and try to come up with collective creative solutions to that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a really good point. I find that the more agencies that an individual is accessing, and if you have an open case or a case worker everywhere, it gets very confusing. Are you my housing case manager, or are you my, what are you to me? So holding that very loosely has worked well for us as well. So what about people with dual diagnosis? So that would be substance abuse and mental health, or I don't even know if it's a formal thing, but I think of triple diagnosis: physical health, mental health, and substance abuse issues that you're dealing with, which a lot of the people we see have all three. How do you all feel about that, and what are the challenges for addressing those?
So on our side of things in mobile crisis world, I think one of the challenges, and also kind of going towards your previous question, is when people want resources, when they want to get connected to something and when they don't. And also the people who are involved with them, understanding the line of how we can make them, quote unquote, do something, and when we can't make someone do something. And you have autonomy, you have choice, and allowing people to have that choice. But when we have to determine when we have to, in a sense, take that choice away. And that's one of the biggest challenges, is explaining that to that client, but also to the people who are involved with them. And so that also comes with substance use. And that's kind of what precluding that with, is it's very common to hear people say, well, they're substance users, so they're harming themselves. So they're at a danger to themselves. That doesn't make us have to get them into treatment, though. There is a choice that that person has. And the challenge in seeing how that occurs. And then also, a lot of the population we'll work with don't have phones. And so trying to track them down once we do find a placement, which is why we often try to use our behavioral health urgent care I mentioned earlier, because at least it gives us a chance to have them somewhere and help to get them transported to a detox if that's the case. But then the other barrier that you're talking about with the health concerns and those things, that's when we use MIH all the time out in the field to come and check vitals for us and things to see, since we aren't mobile crisis as clinicians, we can't check the medical side of things. I mean, we're not medical, sorry, we're clinicians. And so we use them to come check those things for us to help us determine where can we place that person? Where can we help them to find a bed to get the treatment that they're looking for? And unfortunately, there is the limitations of some of those placements, as many of us know, won't take a lot of medical concerns. The dual diagnosis can play a role into where they can and cannot go, and having to use those different services. So that's kind of our side of things.
Yeah, an example of, I'm an example person, but an example that I have dealt with is it is very difficult to get substance abuse care if you have high blood pressure, because the substance abuse care clinic is not a medical clinic. So if you have high blood pressure and they're worried that you're going to have a stroke while you're in, that's there's not care for that. Or if you need mental health care, but your substance abuse is so severe, it's hard to get through that to get to mental health care. And a lot of it is just, it's liability and it's safety and it's for the good of the person, but that oftentimes gets in the way. And I think we've all had that experience. So we have a question that what are your greatest challenges and how do you integrate care? And I think you touched a little bit on it, Courtney, but if somebody wants to expound, is one of your goals to decrease homelessness or to care for people where they are? That's a good question. Who wants to jump on that one?
I'll jump on that. One of my greatest challenges actually is keeping up with everybody. I have right now, my personal list is at 189, and that number will fluctuate on a daily basis. So there's like 189 people that I know of who are on the streets, in a building, in a tent, something of the sort, someplace that's not fit for habitation. And as far as my goal, yes, my goal is definitely to decrease homelessness, and I really want to see them get the care that they need. The issue there is, and the challenge is that sometimes they don't want it, and they got the right to say no to it. That's heartbreaking, but it's their right. If they don't want it, we can't force them to take it. So that's one of my biggest challenges.
Mm-hmm. The number that that Mark is talking, I'm talking for you, Mark, but the number that Mark is talking about is a wonderful collaboration between all of the outreach entities in our city and Forsyth County. And I think we had a little uniqueness. There were not many communities in the United States that were allowed to use the street count for our point in time count. So when we go out twice a year and take tons of volunteers and count people that are literally on the street and in shelters, The list was so well done by outreach that that Housing HUD let us use that instead. And I personally would like to keep up with that because it is much more accurate number. It changes literally every single day. So let's see, what's my next question? You touched on a word, you didn't say it, Courtney, but it's compliance. And we hear non-compliant a lot. And it means to me that you're an adult over 18 years old and you have the right to make those decisions for yourself, even if they're really, really bad for you. You do have that right. What would take those rights away? What's something specific that would take those rights away? And is that even a thing?
Sorry, I had to unmute in two places. So it's specifically what we talk about is an involuntary commitment, as some of you may be familiar with, and that is considered a harm to themselves or others. There's kind of that, it gets gray. And so we have to go petition for that IVC at the magistrate. The way you see that is oftentimes when it comes to substance users, like we just mentioned, they're not gonna, just because they're using a substance, it's not gonna occur. However, if say maybe they haven't slept for multiple days and haven't bathed for multiple days, which that gets a little iffy, right? Because if you have the resources to sleep or bathe in the first place. However, it's causing a hindrance. Those are things where we might be able to go consider it kind of as an individual basis. It really is meeting someone where they're at and figuring out what we can do with those things. If they're a harm to themselves, for instance, and we're talking about examples. Literally, I think it was yesterday, we had a client who wanted to harm themselves with an active plan to walk into traffic and was physically located next to traffic at that time. So that is one way for sure we would, of course, want to keep someone safe and would have to take away those rights in a capacity. However, if they were telling us that they, didn't want to be here anymore, but they weren't compliant to getting treatment, but they had no plans and no intent in how they're harming themselves, we wouldn't take away their rights at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that really answered the question.
It does. If anybody out there needs a little bit more, just please, raise your hand or raise your hand in the chat box. But it is a really fine line, and for someone's physical safety, a lot of the agencies will err on the side of caution and go ahead and people are taken with their right to refuse at that point is taken away, and they are taken to the hospital. And then at that point, the hospital will assess whether, whether the person that turned in the IVC to involuntary commitment to the magistrate was warranted or not. The police can do that also. And I have experienced the Winston-Salem Police Department on a call, instead of arresting someone, involuntarily committing them. And that's quite a time commitment for them, because they have to come and physically restrain the person if they're resistant. And because this is an order that comes from the magistrate, go to the hospital and stay. So it could be hours long, and that's taking, a police officer off the street as well. But I've seen that happen many, many times, because I think our police department is very, very caring. I wasn't sure I was going to ask this one. Oh, did you? Yes, Laura.
I was going to add, the police officers have the ability to take someone into emergency custody, which is how they get someone to seek care, maybe not for their best interest.
Mm-hmm.
And they're reluctant to use that. The involuntary commitment forces them to get a physician's evaluation. And that would be if they're a harm to themselves or others. We have had some rare instances where people are a continued, poor decision-making because of underlying medical issues, maybe some dementia issues. And their poor choices are not something that's going to be fixed. And at that point, we have to refer them to an agency like Adult Protective Services to seek guardianship. So that's more of a permanent removal of their, I guess, independent decision-making. They still have the right to seek or refuse medical care, but it takes a lot of the responsibility for daily life away from them. But it's a much more lengthy and involved process.
And I'm glad it's available if needed. So we've got another question. So just jump right in if you know about this. What about access to medications? How do people get their meds to address their mental health challenges and when they don't have insurance? It's a good question.
Well, Lee, we just dealt with an issue like that today.
Mm-hmm.
There are avenues. There are charitable organizations that will help with prescriptions on, I guess, an as-needed basis, but they have to demonstrate a need. If someone in the state of North Carolina has Medicaid for their insurance, the pharmacy cannot deny them legally their behavioral health medications. And we've found that that's not always something that the pharmacists are aware of, and certainly not something that the people with Medicaid are aware of, that they can get their medications without denial if they have Medicaid.
Mm-hmm. That kind of leads into another question about the potential expense and who bears it. So who bears the expense of treatment if intervene for IVC or hospitalization or medication? And is the potential expense often a reason for the individual to refuse treatment? What are you all seeing?
Okay, so from our standpoint, just so it's clear, with Mobile Crisis, you're never going to get a bill from Mobile Crisis. It does not mean where we would try to refer you to are all bill free. I can't make those promises. However, we try and work with you and or with the client, I should say, and what's occurring for them. But Mobile Crisis directly, you'll never receive a bill from. Yes, medications have created quite a challenge for us to get those referrals, to get to those treatments. And I mean, I'll be honest, that's when we use MIH too. Laura has heard my name and my team's voices so many times going, hey, we tried this, hey, we tried that. How can you help us? But we try and work with the clients. We try and contact anyone we know also, or talk to others to help if a client truly wants to get past that as a concern. We try the best we can, but it does pose a challenge, and it does pose a challenge to when clients don't have insurance. If they have an ID though that is in the state, and particularly in the county, it's a lot easier for us to find additional resources because there is funding in the state for people who don't have insurance. However, again, that ID, having an ID or having mail coming to a certain address, that's where I would praise Sitting with Dwellings too, being able to use their address. That makes it a lot easier to find and access those additional resources for those who don't have insurance. Just because I saw it pop up in here real quick, Mobile Crisis is funded through the state dollars. I saw that pop up on there. Daymark is a nonprofit organization, and we are funded through state dollars and Medicaid dollars, and it is funneled through the MCO, which is a managed care organization, and that's Cardinal. I saw someone had popped that up on the question.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody on this panel know, I know that crisis control helps with medications, and it's pretty easy to access for the first 3 months. And then there's a little bit more that you need, they would like for you to get established to be there, to be your pharmacy, which is totally understandable. Does anybody know if crisis control provides any mental health care medication? Because it's all free. Yeah, I don't think they do, but I'm going to check that out for sure. But I know that I don't think that that's something they can do, because somebody, but yes, somebody asked, or Beth asked it, is crisis control one that will help with meds? Yes, absolutely. But I'm like 99% sure it's not mental health care medication. That not all not all places do that, and not all the free clinics do that. So another question is, how connected are mental health challenges to substance abuse? Go, Laura.
I was going to add that in, and this is a perfect opportunity. I think that a large percentage of the substance use begins as self-medication because of undesired side effects from mental health medications, a difficulty with access to providers and to mental health medications, and the substances are easily accessible and readily available to them. And if they're gonna, what everybody would do, take the path of least resistance and go with what works and what you can get your hands on.
Mm-hmm.
So then you end up with 2 issues instead of 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We did get a comment in the chat from one of the folks that they don't think they do narcotics at crisis control. And I'm pretty sure about that, but we'll find out that for sure. Downtown, let's see, the Health Plaza, Downtown Healthcare Plaza is, and they've got something called Care Plus, which a lot of our folks that are really vulnerable and have a hard time making appointments and things will address these needs as well. To me, very, very low barrier, like Daymark. So Jackie says, I take a couple of your clients to the Health Plaza who get no assistance and their meds are free. Their meds are psych meds. So that's another resource. It also has mental health care and physical health care. So it's so cool. At Daymark, Courtney, talk about the clinic that is literally in the same lobby and how that's accessed.
Sorry. Yeah, so, and I might not be the best speaker to this. This is where I was hopeful my boss was going to join along, but she wasn't able to tonight. So we have, oh geez, what is it? I can't think of what it's called, but there is a clinic right there next into the same lobby. And if they are currently a client with Daymark, they can access the resources over at that health clinic. Oh man, I can't think of their name all of a sudden. I know Laura knows, she'll help me out. Go ahead. Yeah, you can tell me the name, I know you know it. But they're able to go ahead and get those resources when they are already getting treatment through us. And it's at a low or no cost, depending on the situation. And there's a sliding scale and those kinds of things that go along with it. Oh, I see the sergeant's on.
Yes.
Courtney,
Hi, Kevin. He's connecting to audio. So we're getting ready. What's the name of the clinic, Laura? At
It's the
Daymark?
Highland Avenue Clinic. It's the Highland Avenue
Yeah.
Clinic. And the Downtown Health Plaza they have charity care, which can help people with limited resources get to care and medications.
Yeah. So I'd like to welcome to the screen. How's our audio, Kevin? Are you hearing us? And
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Oh, wonderful. So I'd like to introduce Sergeant Kevin Bowers, and who is working tonight. He's on duty tonight, so was called away, and we're so glad that you joined us. Kevin, we have been talking about the question that we posed to all the panelists. So let's just jump right in. And then you all out there, just keep asking questions. And Emily, you're going to be watching the time and give us some kind of flag or something, right? Yeah. So we've been asking the panelists. Sergeant Bowers is with the Winston-Salem Police Department, specifically with the Downtown Bike Patrol. One of the kindest, gentlest, most respected humans I've ever met. He is really my first closest relationship, I would say. You were my first, Kevin, to really get to know you and have a really good working professional relationship. And you've taught me so many things. So what we asked the panelists is to describe how the Winston-Salem Police Department intersects with our neighbors experiencing homelessness, specifically with those that are facing mental health care challenges.
That's on a daily basis for us, especially downtown, with the number of homeless folks that end up staying downtown or come downtown during the daytime. If they are staying in a shelter, which a lot of times we're finding that the folks that we come across that won't stay at a shelter do have mental health issues, and they don't want to be somewhere in there inside. They want to stay outside. But it's on a daily basis that we come into contact with, whether it's us coming up on folks that may be in crisis, or we know that they have already from past experience that they have mental health, illness, and then we'll come across them, see how they're doing, or sometimes you can tell if they're having a bad day or a worse day than the previous day that we saw them, then we're getting calls from folks, citizens, to go check on this person, that they're walking down the street and they're talking to themselves, but they're not doing any harm to anybody, and then that and they're not trying to do any harm to themselves. But we still are, we're dispatched to it, and we go out and we check on them just to make sure, that they're okay. It's daily. We work 5 days on, and then we're off for a few days, and then we come back. But there's a new gentleman that's in town. I think his name's Joshua Wilson. We've had him trespassing at one of the parking decks recently. And then a couple other things, and then panhandling, and we're trying to put him in direction of whether it be City with Dwellings to go over to get it assistance, because I'm not sure if he's stranded here. Somebody was saying that he's maybe from Greenville, North Carolina, and then or to a shelter, which I don't think he's interested in doing. We've even asked if he wanted, knowing that if he wants a blanket or something like that, since he's staying outside at all the times, but he's declined that as well. But going, we know that we EMS has MIH units, where we call for them on a regular basis to assist us. Officers at our department, they're trying to make sure that everybody gets through the classes, the SIT class, crisis intervention training, and that's I think when I went, and that's been at least 10 years ago, 11 years ago that I went to it. I believe it was like a 4 or 5 day course, and to deal with better help us to deal with folks that have mental illness. And from across the spectrum, from whether if they're deal with schizophrenia, bipolar, autism, all that. So all officers are getting that training, or they're trying to make sure that everybody gets that training. So we have some sort of baseline to go from. And by no means we're not experts in it, but it's just something else that to go in our tool belt, so to speak, and to be able to help out people that are in crisis. And of course, we have Daymark, which is not far away from here, from downtown, over on Highland Avenue, which, you know, we can use their services. And then, you know, of course, you know, there's been times that I've even, you know, have not made headway with somebody, and I'll call Lee or somebody else from City with Dwellings to come out and, you know, to help us too, because sometimes they just don't want to talk to the police, and folks want to talk to somebody else that's not dressed up in a uniform. And it, you know, it doesn't hurt my feelings. And you know, it's you know, we're all end up being in this together and stuff, and just trying to help folks.
Yeah, I was just praising this whole group is a think outside the box group, is a collaborative group. So we use each other as a resource, and sometimes as a little bit of pastoral care. I will have to say, I have called multiple people on this screen just to say, I'm at my wit's end and I need somebody else who knows this person, and let's put our heads together, which is collaboration and cooperation is huge. And I just don't see how we can, any of us individually can do this alone. So I got a good one for Mark here. Mark, what is the most creative way you've de-escalated a mental health situation? Oh, I wonder who sent that one in. It wasn't me.
Oh my goodness. And there's been several creative ways. Anything from dancing with the person out the door. You know, I think the one thing this person is probably referring to is we had someone who was rolling around in a parking lot one day, and I just go out to the parking lot and lay down beside him. And I'm just meeting him where he's at, and I'm laying there beside him, and he's rolling around. I'm looking at him. I'm saying, you know what? This really is not a comfortable place to lay down. Like, is it okay to get up now? And he's just rambling on, and he eventually gets up. And I realize how old I am because I could barely get up myself.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that's one of the ways. Also, with one of our guys, one of the ways to really get him motivated to move is literally to dance with him and to get him to rap or freestyle or something. So it's really, for me, meeting that person where they're at. If I know them and know their personality, I can bring that out in them, bring some sort of fun, creative way, and that will de-escalate really quick.
Gotcha. Anybody else got any great war stories or something that was just a little bit outside of the box that I have seen the Winston-Salem Police Department just do amazing things, you know, right there as they come out. I have never gotten the feeling that the WSPD is looking to incarcerate. They're just, our local WSPD is looking to help that person and the community at large. And this is just a personal opinion, but I think sometimes our police department ends up being the last ditch effort for someone's mental health. And we were talking about compliance earlier, Kevin. And so you know how important that is. You know, without someone being a harm to themselves or others, we really can't, as a community, we can't take their right away to make choices, even if they're really, really destructive choices for their mental health or their physical health or their, you know, substance abuse. So yeah, I'm sure y'all have some great.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it's you know, we came across a gentleman that we haven't seen in a while that came to the office today, and he'd been away for a while, but he has mental illness, and but he was able to come to us and say, hey, you know, I'm feeling suicidal. I would like to go to the hospital. So one of our officers, you know, met with him. We made sure he was okay. You know, asked if he, you know, being hot, asked if he wanted a cup of water, you know, so we got him a cup of water, and then he was ready to go. And we, you know, transported him over, and, you know, and it was voluntary, you know, voluntary commitment call. But so took him over to the Forsyth Hospital. That's where he desired to go. And so, you know, we took him over there. The officer got him in to the emergency department, you know, got him checked in with the triage nurse and all. But you know, and I'm going on the one, I think I saw a question on there about how many times do we come across folks downtown, we come across folks, multiple times during the 5 days that we're working our shift. And then we can even come across them, more than one time a day. Yesterday there was a call, it was our first day back. And, there was a call on one particular individual. It might've been the one who was laying in the sidewalk that Mark was talking about. And, where it was reported that he was trespassing somewhere. He left the property, was on the sidewalk. But his behavior with drug use and all, and it's destructive, but that's a difficult one for us to be able to, get and go before a magistrate and have a paper drawn up, or to take him for an emergency one, because we run into a lot of times over at the hospitals, if it's drug, it's like, well, they're not going to hold him. They'll make sure medically evaluate them and all, and they don't hold them. But there's other times we'll have somebody that's deciding they want to go out in the middle of the street, and try to get hit by cars. That's a little bit more that we have, to go on where, that's a sign that they're trying to, to harm themselves. It actually could harm somebody else though, make somebody run off the road or whatever. So, that's a little bit easier to do an emergency commitment, versus, even bothering to have to go down to the magistrate's office and all. But, we come and we ended up dealing with that individual, the gentleman, again, a second time then yesterday. But then turns out he had a warrant, where I guess he hadn't appeared in court. So at that point in time, we ended up, we took him to the detention center. I'm not sure if he was, got out at that particular time or not, or if he's still there or not, but I know that he wasn't able to be back out on the street, with the potential to harm himself due to his, intoxication levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Emily, I don't know exactly how we're doing on time, but there's a really good question in the chat box that I do want to touch on because it's an action step. So the question is, aside from knowing the available resources to call when we encounter someone in a mental health care crisis, and this is for all of us that are not mental health care professionals, what can we do to advocate for our neighbors so they have better access to long-term mental health care? It's a long question. It's in the chat box if you need to see it.
I'd like to start out by saying it's important to access the right service from the get-go. So a lot of these people who are used to going to the emergency room get frustrated when they go voluntarily because they have to be medically cleared before they ever see a behavioral health clinician. So if there's not a medical reason for them to go to the hospital, they will get more rapid assessment if they go to somewhere with a behavioral health clinician can evaluate them. So the urgent care, mobile crisis, getting them connected with a clinic quickly, a lot of times, especially if they're in mental health crisis, they're already emotionally volatile. And getting quick access to that clinician is so vitally important to working through the crisis and getting them to the right care. The hospital is going to be a delay. It's going to be a wait. And then they've got to have their vitals assessed, and they've got to go through that whole medical clearance process before they ever get to a behavioral health clinician. So we need, as the people who encounter them first, as the people who encounter them where they are, we need to be more astute in getting them to the right place appropriately, so that they can get the care and the right person to talk to quickly. Mm-hmm. Did that make any sense, or did that sound like a whole?
It made sense to me, but I know what you're talking about. So we will have some resources on the City with Dwellings website of course, your emergency services are that's what they're there for. They are there, they know resources, they have the expertise, like calling 911. You may not need a fire truck, but you may have someone that you encounter walking in the middle of traffic, no pants on, and talking to someone that you can't see. that's what you need to tell 911, because they're going to be able to get you to the right resource. So always, use that. But we do have, and our services are walk-in. Daymark is, to me, the population that we serve on the street, homeless, Daymark, you can make an appointment, but you can also, if you get there when the doors open, you can walk in and you are one of the first people seen. So you can be assessed and talk to a clinician and have some, get an appointment to see a doctor if you need after that. So the services are not terrible to access, but oftentimes, and I've heard more than one of you say, walking alongside, that is so important, to have a relationship with the person, because these are our neighbors, to walk alongside them as they access, because handing someone a piece of paper or a pamphlet with a resource, I can't tell you how many of those I find in the bottom of book bags. And the person says, no one will help me, but walking alongside is huge. And everybody on this panel knows how important that is. So do we have time for another question? So do we have the next question? Would more funding for more staff to do what our mental health care folks be helpful? We're always going to say yes to more outreach, but I'm not 100% sure we've got a great list, and outreach is the responsibility is to find and to identify and to offer, not to provide the services. So, a warm handoff to these other agencies is really more appropriate. So I don't know how I really feel about more of those, but it's the second part of that is, as far as advocacy, we, the general people, can we advocate for more funding for our professional staff? And does anybody know how to do that and where to do that? And if we need that, or do we need to just be educating more about what we already have? That's a good one.
Of course, more funding is always welcome, because mental health is historically and underfunded. They take away mental health resources more than they add to. For decades, they've taken away. I think it would be more judicious if we looked at the gaps that exist and start to address those gaps, start to address those warm handoffs. If they do go to the hospital and they are evaluated and they're deemed not to be a threat to themselves in the emergency department, then that warm connection, rather than just discharge with a piece of paper that says, go follow up at this clinic with someone, you expect them to read through this multiple page handout and figure out that they should go straight over to a clinician from the emergency room. It's just not, it's not logical. It's just not something that they're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, backpacks all over town are stuffed full of pieces of paper that never get followed through on. Is there anything that this panel feels like they wanted to say, they wanted for just general public people that are just really curious about what they can do to help their neighbors experiencing homelessness with mental health issues? Is there anything that you want to say that you didn't get to say? One question that Kevin, that you didn't, you weren't here for, was, do you ever feel like your hands are tied? And why? When you're facing because I know exactly who you're talking about, because we were involved with that gentleman, the three times, and so are there ever times that you feel that way?
Oh yeah, I mean, it happens, and it wasn't, well, I guess yesterday there was a separate call, and I spoke to you. I called you about it, and to me, I didn't think the lady who I spoke to on the phone, because she didn't want the police coming to her house, where she was staying at. And over the phone, she sounded that she was okay, that didn't seem to be like any mental illness or anything like going on. Well, but then when later on I talked to the daughter, who's grown. The lady was in her 70s. She had recently moved here and all that. But the daughter was saying that she was having, mental health issues, and that, but then again, her age, and she couldn't get around, and she was in a wheelchair. And then options at that time of the day to, like to say, hey, to reach out to maybe Adult Protective Services, because the woman didn't want to stay where she was staying anymore. Because knowing then, because her predicament where she's in a wheelchair, and if she wanted to go to one of the shelters, there's requirements for her to be able to get around once she's in the shelter. And if say for instance, if she were to go to Bethesda, she's got to be able to, I believe, be able to get up a certain number of bunks, to or a certain number of levels and all. And if she can't do that, then I guess that she's not able to stay there. So and then just not trying, not being able to at that time where everybody's time is important and all, and it's you feel for these folks because you can't get them to a place where that they are maybe going to feel safer, and all, and so I mean, yeah, that happens, feel that your hands are tied, and especially the later the day that it happens, and especially at nighttime when you're working, and if that that something like that happens, it's a lot of times it's going to be until the next day where we're able to get something done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do other agencies have that kind of time constraint? We feel that a lot. You hit 5 o'clock. Actually, you hit after 2 o'clock on a Friday, and you have a homeless person experiencing some mental illness, and you can take them to the BHUC, the behavioral health, which Courtney, but they have to want to go. And sometimes it is a little discouraging that you think, I just don't know what to do. A mental health care focused shelter situation has always been a dream of mine, because you can't expect the shelters, they're not mental health care professionals, so you can't expect them to be able to handle that level of mental health care need, but a shelter situation for folks experiencing mental health care, crisis and need, I think is something we could use in our community. So we got a question. And I think, Kevin, you touched on this too, so expound a little bit. Are our police being trained to make a quick mental health assessment when encountering people who are acting out?
Yeah, we are. We try to figure out. I mean, when we're in the training, the SIT training and stuff, we go over, different, there's categories and something that kind of like, if you're on if you're investigating a DWI case, there's things, that cues, that we're looking for and all, and trying to figure out. And then, I'll talk to anybody. And downtown, we have to be able to talk to anybody, from somebody, that's homeless. They may, or not in there homeless, but they're at their lowest point, and then, business owners, regular everyday citizens and all that stuff. But, and, just try to ask them, what, if they've ever been diagnosed with anything, and, try to get them to open up. But yeah, I mean, we're looking, try to look for cues, and clues, as to what's going on. And if they're carrying a bag, and, it looks like one of the white plastic bags that come from a hospital. And, a lot of times they're going to have information in there, biographical information on the paperwork. And a lot of times they're going to have prescription medication that they might have been prescribed or given a certain allotment of, and, you can, if you're not sure about it, what it's for, we'll, try to ask them about it. And a lot of times in my interactions, folks will tell you, what it's for. And if we're not able to, figure that out, one of the best resources that we have right now, and I know they're getting worn thin and stuff, is Miss Smith, Laura, with EMS and all, and coming out and helping us out with folks, but I'm so glad we're able to partner with them and stuff. So because she came out a couple months ago when we were dealing with a gentleman at of all places at the magistrate's office at the jail and stuff. And the guy, I think he had an injury also to his leg, so he wasn't very mobile and all. But she was able to talk, to him and calm him down and stuff, to the point where we weren't able to get him calmed down and all. So, but yeah. So fortunately, we were able to, get in contact with people. I've got, I save a lot of numbers in my phone, my work phone. Lee, I have you on speed dial, and all. And so, and Mark's come out to a new gentleman that we have that's hanging out over on the 400 block of Trade Street. He's suffering from alcoholism, but then he says he's told us though that he suffers from bipolar as well. So, and he's had medicine and stuff. So for the most part, folks are going to open up to us and they're going to talk to us and all. So it's just about asking and talking to them and treating people, treating folks with dignity and all, and treating them like you want to be treated as well. And when you're talking to them and stuff, and you don't have to be talking down to them and all.
Yeah, I am humbled to be colleagues with this group and more. There are more people. This isn't all of them, but too big a panel is just hard to handle. So I thank you all so much. One thing that I have heard a common theme is when we use resources correctly, if we can, and that means collaboration. So if I can't do it, you might be able to do it, or I might be able to do some part and you can do another part. When we do that, it's ultimately going to save our community big dollars, because it means the emergency resources are not being abused, but they're being utilized in their proper thing. So I am, again, humbled to be a part of this group, and I'm going to throw this now to Charlisa to wrap us up.
All righty. Well, I would just like to say again, a big thank you to all of you, Courtney, Mark, Lark, Kevin, and yes, you, Lee, too, because you were on the panel, even though, you were just supposedly the moderator. You provided us a lot of invaluable information, too, and insight. I'm just going to speak, I'm hoping on behalf of everyone out there, you guys you can just kind of feel that you guys are really committed, truly committed, and enjoy what you do to help our, neighbors who are homeless and those who are experiencing mental health crises. And I'm just in awe of that. Just knowing that you guys are really, truly making a difference in the lives of others, and you do it so selflessly. I think I'm just going to give you guys a hand, and I hope everybody else does too, for what you guys are doing each and every day. So with that, again, thank you. And I think that's all for this evening, for this, edition of Roots and Responses. So for everyone out there in virtual world and in Facebook land, stay tuned for our upcoming sessions. We will post that soon and let you know what our next topic will be. But again, thank you all for taking time out of your busy evening to be a part of us and just learn how we all together can work to make a difference for our neighbors who are homeless. All right. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you again.